Welcome to the BiggerPockets Money Podcast, show number 77 with Pete Mockaitis from the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast.
It's time for a new American dream, one that doesn't involve working in a cubicle for 40 years, barely scraping by. Whether you're looking to get your financial house in order, invest the money you already have, or discover new paths for wealth creation, you're in the right place. This show is for anyone who has money or wants more. This is the BiggerPockets Money Podcast.
How's it going, everybody? I'm Scott Trench. I'm here with my co-host, Miss Mindy Jensen. How are you doing today, Mindy?
Scott, I'm having a great day. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. I want to jump right into the discussion about how folks can kind of get some takeaways from this podcast. And there's three, we're going to talk about this in depth with Pete, who is a fantastic guest, very smart, lots of kind of new thoughts and insights in terms of how to make this whole personal finance thing work. But three kind of actionable tips that I think you should kind of think about seriously doing right now or right after you listen to this podcast or right when you get home or finish, whenever you have the opportunity. One, compute your daily, weekly, or monthly or some sort of time-based burn rate, the amount of cash that it costs you to fund your lifestyle as it currently exists. And compare that to the amount of savings or liquidity that you've got that you'd be willing to spend to fund that lifestyle, right? That's your financial runway. That's the amount of time you can survive without a paycheck and still kind of maintain your lifestyle, right? Number two, compute the value of your time, both pre-tax and post-tax. So how much do you earn per hour before tax? How much does that equal after taxes are distributed from that? And are you doing activities in your life that you could maybe hire out that would be much more cost effective for you? And then the third tip is, once you have those two numbers, can you kind of see some inefficiencies in your life, some ways that you could dramatically increase your financial runway or leverage your time or your money more effectively to help you move towards what really matters in your life? We're going to get into those concepts in the interview today, but I wanted to kind of hit those home right off the bat so that you had them in mind and we're thinking about them going into the show.
Yeah, that's a really great point. That is a huge part of today's episode. And, I actually struggle with the concept of hiring it out. So Pete really has a great way to look at that in a slightly different angle and discover that, you're not a bad person for paying somebody to do something for you if you can then use that time to go generate more income than you are paying out in the cost of that service. So that's as a DIY person, it's really difficult for me to pay somebody to do something that I could do myself, but it's not always the best choice for me to do it. Pete Mockaitis from Awesome at Your Job. Welcome to the BiggerPockets Money Podcast. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm great. Thanks, Mindy. Thanks, Scott. It's a thrill to be here.
I'm super excited to have you. We send out a pre-show questionnaire to all of our guests. And I really liked some of the answers that you said, especially your one about how did you find financial independence? And some of the things that we're going to be covering today are like how you grew up knowing about money, which is a little different from most of our guests. So let's start off with where your journey with money begins. And then I want to know exactly how you discovered financial independence.
Oh, sure thing. Well, my journey with money begins in my hometown of Danville, Illinois, which, fun fact, was once named the cheapest place to live in the United States. So that's cool. And I remember maybe my first money experiences were with my brother who had a paper route. And sometimes I would help him out and he would pay me $0.25 for my assistance. I thought that was pretty cool because I could get 2 little Jolly Rancher sticks from the nearby market for $0.25 until I learned that he was banking about $1.80 per route, which is still a crazy low number, right? How is that legal? But and then he sort of made the point, well, hey, I'm sort of bigger and stronger and faster, and I do more than half the work, and I have to do it every day, and you sort of help out whenever. So I think it's fine. And so he had the bargaining power, and I learned a lesson when it comes to money and positioning. And I didn't do the route as often after that, but I still did from time to time. That's probably where it begins, but I think really where it matures is that my mom worked at the credit union in town for teachers. which was kind of funny. So like all of my teachers were in contact with my mother regularly, where they were like depositing their paychecks, which, is good and bad, depending on my behavior in the recent weeks. And so there were just a lot of great lessons there in terms of she was kind of spooked about debt because she had seen people, declare bankruptcy and then just sort of, that just wipes away, the money in the credit union from the members. And that was kind of spooky for her. So I was like, note to self, don't go bankrupt. That's very bad. That kind of triggered something deep in me. And I've been kind of cautious about debt ever since. But maybe the positives kind of moved toward lesson she taught me there was she noticed that the CEO would stay late to vacuum the place. And she thought, well, that's kind of odd. I know how to vacuum, and I don't know why the sort of most senior person should be doing the vacuuming. And so she volunteered to do the vacuuming. And from that little proactive step, she got more and more responsibility, took on some more and more like classes at community college and conferences and training until ultimately she became the CEO. She rose to prominence at that organization, all because she started to volunteer to vacuum. Just a little bit of proactive noticing and making your boss's life easier was a pretty cool lesson.
I love that. I think that mentality is not common enough with folks in the workplace, right? Like, isn't vacuuming beneath her? Right? Like that shouldn't be.
You could think of that.
It's important to be vacuuming, right?
I didn't get a fancy degree to vacuum.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great piece of advice just generally. Like if you're looking to get ahead, I mean, you go back and listen to David Green.
Oh yeah.
On the Bigger Money podcast. I forget what episode that is. We'll mention it in a second here.
Episode 12.
Oh, wow. Mindy's on the spot with it. Okay. But his episode, he brings that mindset to it and the career ramifications of bringing that to the table, those little extra efforts and the ability for them to generate more opportunity and fast and rapid advancement. Just absolutely astonishing.
Absolutely.
Well, she's not cleaning toilets with her own toothbrush.
Oh, right.
She's vacuuming the floor. How gross is the floor?
Right. Especially if it's vacuumed daily, you can't accumulate too much.
Exactly. And how big is this space? She's not vacuuming 25,000 square feet of floor. She's vacuuming, a fairly small portion. Yeah, it sucks. But look at what her boss, oh God.
Nice. Yes.
Oh, I quit. I'm done. And from episode 77 of the Bigger
bag.
No, but vacuuming the floor isn't like somebody's life dream, probably. But it doesn't take that much time. It's not that difficult. It's not that gross. So your boss notices, and some people will say that it's a suck up maneuver. Oh God, I'm trying not to cry. No,
that's fantastic.
I'm out. Goodbye. No, it's not fantastic. It's horrible.
We're cleaning house with the vacuum jokes.
Oh God. Oh, this is going to be the worst episode ever.
It's going to be great.
And it was going to be good too. Pete's really smart. No, I was trying to say, kiss up. There you go. Kiss up to your boss. You're not really kissing up to your boss. You're doing something that needs to be done. And I think a lot of people might stop themselves from volunteering this. Oh, I don't want to look like a kiss up. I'm not going to say the vacuum words anymore. And it's not that. David Green asked his boss, what is your pain point? What do you hate? And she said, I hate that there's spots on my glasses. Well, I've been a waitress. You know what? You have a lot of downtime, especially when you first get there. So you can stand around or you can wipe glasses and stand around. If you're wiping glasses and your boss is happy about that, I just don't see why some people call it sucking up. You're helping your boss. You know what? You want your boss to like you. Let me tell you how much it stinks to have your boss not like you. See, I didn't say suck.
Certainly. Yeah. And I think maybe if they think it's sort of kissing up, I think that's maybe just sort of a rationalization for, I'm not doing that and maybe I should be. And I kind of feel a little, I don't know, maybe bad or lazy that I'm not hustling. So the simple way to relieve that cognitive dissonance is to be like, yeah, that person's kissing up. I don't want to be like them. So, but that's not a great logical, place to be coming from.
No.
So how did these lessons you learned growing up translate into your approach to early financial freedom?
Oh, sure thing. Well, some of them were semi against my will, I guess. So for instance, with the debt story, I fell in love with Duke University. I thought, oh my gosh, this is just the place. This is the campus. This is the vibe. It's so cool. And but all of my family went to the University of Illinois, which is about 40 minutes away from where I grew up, which is a great school, U.S. News, top 50, all that. But I was just like, yeah, I don't know. I've been there a few times. It's really speaking to me. I don't know. And so that was the one time my mom and I kind of tussled a bit. We sort of had great got along very well, but there was a little bit of son mother turbulence. And in fact, I even got a full tuition scholarship to the University of Illinois, and I originally hid it from my mom because I thought, well, that's going to be difficult to have the conversation. Like, I know I have a free tuition, but I don't want to. I want to go somewhere else. But ultimately, I came around and said, you know what? I met some cool people there. There's some cool activities there, and I grew to love it. So I was very pleased I went there. Mom was correct. University of Illinois is a great choice, and it was awesome to exit without any debt associated with college. And we talk about the initiative. I also kind of discovered this industry called strategy consulting, which I thought seemed like the coolest thing ever. And I was hungry to sort of from day one of college, thinking being proactive. I thought, all right, I want to end up at McKinsey, Bain, or the Boston Consulting Group when I'm done with this. And so I sort of planned my extracurriculars and my practice of what's called the case interview to accomplish that. And then it was really cool how when I got my internship at Bain, I saw a letter with the other interns. And so we also had some folks from Northwestern and Duke. It was like, oh, I didn't go to Duke, and I'm in the same career place without having to pay a bunch of debt. This is awesome.
I love it. And by the way, for everyone listening, this speaks to an incredible track record of success academically throughout high school, college, and then to get an employment offer with Bain out of college is outstanding, right? That means you were a top student in the class, interviewed well, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, it is. It's pretty competitive in terms of the applicants versus the offers.
So using that great opportunity out of college, how did you then pursue early financial freedom?
Oh, sure thing. Well, it's funny. So I grew up frugal, in terms of, my parents would say if we went out, which is somewhat rare and usually to like a fast food place, it was like, we're not going to buy a beverage. We have beverages at home. It was like, okay. And that was just sort of like the norm. And so I would order water, just sort of like instinctively in most places. I much preferred the house parties when available amongst my Bain colleagues, as opposed to going to the fancy club with the fancy cocktails. And this was before Uber X was really kind of up and running. But if I had to choose between a cab fare, which is pretty pricey, or a bus, or just a longer walk, I would almost always choose to walk. And sometimes my colleagues there would tease me a little bit, like, hey, that we make a lot of money, right? It's not really necessary for you to ride the bus. And I also had 2 roommates and then 3 roommates in the apartment which I lived at, which was awesome. So sure enough, I was able to do a whole boatload of savings because I had a hunch that the next step for me was going to be something entrepreneurial. I had a Jones to do some, speaking, writing, people development stuff. And I had a great mentor who said, well, Pete, save some of that Bain money because that's probably going to take a year plus before you're really up and running with that. And I said, okay, thank you, sir. And so I did just that.
So how long did it take you to save up a year of expenses?
Yeah, it was just under 3 years is the length of time. And so it was funny because I remember thinking that, boy, they're paying me plenty here. And in fact, I might have been the only person who thought this at the time, but I said, you know what? I'd be cool if they just like paid me half and made me work half as much, because I got all this extra money. And so people sort of thought that was odd, but that's because they were living in their schnazzy, fancier, maybe 1-bedrooms, right near, the river and the beauty. And I was a little bit more north by Wrigley Fieldish.
Love it. Well, so walking through that, I mean, you save up for these 3 years, you get a year's worth of expenses lined up, I assume in a area that you can access them. And
Right.
then you do what?
Well, then I took the leap, and I probably should have had a better plan or had a little bit of a side hustle going first. But in a way, at the consulting firms, it's sort of regimented in terms of like the timelines. It's sort of like, okay, hey, it's been about 3 years. What are you thinking? Thinking business school? Where do you want to be? And I said, you know what? I think I want to take a crack at this, speaker, author, people development thing. And so that's what I went and did. And it was funny. I kind of floundered for a little bit because, I think I maybe drank too much Kool-Aid when it comes to the follow your dreams, follow your passion. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And it was like, well, wait a second. It's all the rules of business still apply. Like there are customers who need to purchase an offering from you that solves a problem or is superior in some way to the competitors. And so just because it's your passion to, be on stage and speak or write doesn't actually mean it's going to get you paid. Some passions get you paid and some passions don't. And so that was very informative for me as I kind of floundered a little bit, like, I'll talk to anybody about anything. I could do my research and, make some slides that look great. And then I kind of really zeroed in over time. I was like, you know what, really, it's sort of about the universal skills and the speaking and, the thinking that's working out. And so what sort of saved my bacon as my money was, declining a little bit is I sort of plugged in with another guy who was offering a case interview coaching for aspiring management consultants. I was like, oh, this works for me. It's people development and it's something I know. And I could sort of fit it in between speaking gigs and it was awesome. So that's kind of how that worked out. I often freaked out, like, oh my gosh, am I going to run out of money? I don't have I don't have a paycheck the way I used to. But what I did was make a spreadsheet that kind of laid out, okay, here are all my assets. Here's how quickly I'm spending money on dollars per day basis. And then that always just kind of brought me comfort. Like, all right, hey, Pete, even if you had zero revenue, zero for over 400 days, you wouldn't be dead broke. And if you were dead broke, you're not dead, About 14% of people actually have negative net worths, and it's okay. No need to panic.
Love it. So I think that's a great outlook, right? And I think the fact that you saved a lot of money and likely had a fairly low cost of living kind of enabled some of that comfort for you to when you put together that spreadsheet and did all that work. What did that timeline look like in terms of getting your business to a point where you thought, hey, great, now this can be sustainable and grow long term, and I'm not looking for the amount of runway I've got left before I run out of money, but now I'm looking for, hey, this is going to work, and how do I grow it?
Sure thing. Well, it took a while. And I think that it could have gone faster if I were smarter in terms of, like your wise guest would suggest, you do a little bit of a side hustle and you learn and you get some traction, you find product market, some of those sort of smart things. It could have been much less painful for me, but no, I'd say my first year I had around $8,000 of revenue. My second year was around $35,000. And then my third year, it's like we were kind of, making the net worth go up again as opposed to down. And so that was, I think, maybe like 65 plus. And so then, and it's been in a growing, healthy place from there. And I could have not, dropped so low had I been a little bit more proactive and clear on what am I offering and what's distinctive and getting a little bit of traction before I left the comforts of my paychecks.
Love it. And it sounds like those are skills that one could have developed at Bain.
It totally could. It's like, it was like, wait a minute, all of these rules apply. I just got to get up my spreadsheet and do what I do. And that helped.
Love it. I think that's so funny that I just think that's a funny kind of revelation is like, that's what, that skill set perfectly applied and then helped you kind of boost this thing to the next level. It sounds like.
It really did. And that's kind of why I chose that profession originally, because it's like, I don't know for sure what I want to do, but I did walk away pretty convinced that, if I start in strategy consulting, I'll have some skills and some bankroll and some network that can help me with whatever I want to do next, from starting a nonprofit to working in private equity or any number of options. It seemed like a nice flexible move.
Awesome. So what year did you leave the job, and what year did you get to that kind of $65,000 mark in revenue where it was sustainable?
Sure thing. It was about 2009 when I departed, and it was 2012 when things were feeling all right.
You quit a job in 2009? Didn't you know there was a big recession going on?
Yeah, but I was following my passion, Mindy.
Okay, so, would you, knowing what you know now, would you have gone back and done that again in 2009, or would you maybe have altered your timeline a little bit?
I think that I would be okay with the timeline. I would just be much smarter about getting clear about, okay, what's the product? What's the offering? Who's the customer? How am I distinctive? Like just those fundamental things, as opposed to, I'm going to go speak. It'll be fine. I think that was pretty naive of me.
Okay, I want you to go over those again. Who's the customer? I want to write that down, because I think that's really important when you're going to be starting a company. And especially if you're leaving your company, you need to have a really clear goal of or a really clear idea of what you're going to do. And I'm not here to tell you that you did everything wrong, because clearly you did not, even though you did quit your job at literally the worst time. I have a daughter who was born in 2009. And her classroom size is actually shrunk, and they attribute that to the recession had been going on for like a year and a half or so at that time, and people weren't having babies. So I think that's really interesting that that's when you just up and quit on your job.
That's kind of how the timing worked. It's like, hey, graduate 2006. It's about a 3-ish year role unless you are going for the next level, and so there we are, landing right there.
Okay, so who your customer is and how to find them, and like all that defining stuff. Let's start from there.
Oh, sure thing. Well, I think fundamentally, someone is going to when you start a business, fundamentally someone is going to part with money for what you have. You have a product or a service that they want more than they want their money. And they're going to sort of choose you if in fact you are delivering, something that's worthwhile. It's solving a pain point or a problem, and it's a fine option relative to the competition. And so what I find interesting in the realm of speaking, even though it might seem a little bit fuzzy, it's like, your product is like a speech or a performance. And I thought, hey, I've seen a lot of people speak, and I think I speak pretty well. I've got some amazing evaluations saying I was like the best of a conference or whatever. So that's all I'll need, right? It was like, well, no, not quite. It's sort of like we need to see that in that realm. In that case, that you have expertise to offer in terms of, folks are going to walk away transformed with some new knowledge to be better able to do their jobs. Or, you are exceptionally entertaining. It's more like a comedy show, really, than like an educational experience. Or you're just famous.
All right. So, if you're looking back at yourself, or if you're giving advice to somebody who's trying to kind of go through this entrepreneurial route and maybe has some money saved and is thinking about exploring that, what would kind of be some high level advice that you would give outside of knowing your customer and knowing how to deliver a competitive product?
Oh, sure thing. Well, I think that the savings is key. And one thing is I would just recommend that you be smart about your savings, that they are in an accessible place, as you mentioned. Like if they're tied up in your 401k, then they're going to have penalties associated with accessing them. So you want to make sure that it's good and accessible, and it's not in a sort of a highly volatile place, so that it doesn't dip right when you need it. And so those are some fundamentals there. And then I would get real and quantitative associated with, all right, what are all your expenses in terms of like recurring, like your cell phone? Maybe you're going to have to buy your own health insurance, which is way pricier nowadays. Are you going to have to get that car, rent, et cetera, all of those things. And I found it very useful to break those down into a dollars per day basis, because some things I might buy weekly, like groceries, and some things I might buy, monthly, like, cell phone bill. And then I got really clear on, okay, this is what it adds up to. And then here's how much fun money I have, left, so that I'm not sort of going nuts. And that was just so handy in terms of there's clear math that I just cannot argue with, as long as I don't just, go nuts. Like, you know what? Vacationing all across Europe is what is happening now for 3 months. As long as I kind of keep things sort of normal, then those numbers will hold. And I had several check-ins from time to time. And that was just very reassuring in terms of like, I'm not going to go completely broke. If I do, I'm not going to be dead, because I think that we have it hardwired, especially if you're listening to the BiggerPockets Money podcast. Like, you love watching your net worth go up and not down. And when it's going down, that's freaky. It's like, this is not how it should be. I am very uncomfortable with this. And there's almost like a biochemical cortisol reaction inside of you. Like, I cannot endure this. I mean, I might be dramatizing a bit, but sometimes that's how it felt. But when I had that all in black and white, and then a few check-ins, it's like, say, hey, Pete, 20 days ago, you had 380 days of cash remaining. And now, hey, it's 20 days later, and you got 370 days of cash remaining. So it's even more conservative than it says it is, because you have some revenue coming in. And so take a breath, and we're going to kind of pull out of this thing. I kind of imagine like a jet. It's going down, but not for long. We're correcting, and we're back up, and it's all good.
I love it. It's not, I feel like people are very afraid to take the plunge to go in and do something entrepreneurial or on their own, even when they've probably got a position that's way stronger than they need because of that concept. If you're in control of your spending, you have a long period of time to figure out how to make something work if you're smart about it, I think. So I think that's
right.
That's really good advice.
Oh, thank you. And I think that, and you could be you can go the other side of that too, in terms of, this is just what I want to do, and I'm sick of my job, I'm doing my own thing, and boom. Well, if you don't have that savings and a clear picture of how it's going to go, that could be troublesome. So I guess in a lot of this, there's sort of that sort of wise middle way to not be rash, and to not be, a scaredy cat, and just to sort of be logically, wisely bold.
Well, it seems like there's two components to this, right? One is the savings that you have and your burn rate, right? So how much time you have before you run out of money. And the second is your revenue generation. So what would be your advice for someone who's starting out in this, in terms of how they should deploy their time such that they can begin building revenue?
Oh, Scott, this is one of my favorite things to talk about, actually. I am all about thinking about the value of your hour in terms of real dollars. And so you can do this with your existing job, with a quick, calculation on Excel, like, okay, what's my salary? What's the cash value of my benefits? What are my taxes? And how many hours do I have to spend at this job, in a year? Divide, and boom. And they'll tell you something meaningful. Maybe it's $20 an hour. Maybe it's $60 an hour. And then I think so many decisions get easier in terms of, should I buy some help here on this, property? Should I invest in some assistance on my website, or should I do it myself? I had Michael Hyatt as a podcast guest recently, and he's so awesome. And he made a point with someone who said, I kind of know how to make websites. So, I figure that I'm going to be able to pull it off and just do it myself. And he says, okay, so now how much do you normally make, with your coaching? It's like, $100 an hour. It's like, okay, and how much would it cost to pay someone who's really awesome at websites? It's like, maybe $50 an hour. It's like, so you're going to pay some guy who's not that good at websites $100 an hour to do your website, reading yourself. And so he's like, oh. And so that has really been eye-opening for me. Like, I've had times where I was doing coaching sessions, and I was earning over $100 an hour for these coaching sessions, and I might have 11 in a day, during some busy months. And I was like, I don't know when I could do my laundry. And so it's like, am I going to do fewer coaching sessions in order to do my laundry? And I actually hired someone to come into my home and do my laundry, even though I'm working from home. And on one side, that sounds nuts. This guy's working from home and he's hiring someone to do his laundry? That's weird. But on the other hand, it's like, that would free up, I could pay less than 1 hour's worth of work to have 4 hours of laundry done. It was a 3-week buildup. They did a bunch of machines in the basement there. and then I could do more and have my laundry done immaculately. And it's like win-win. So that's how I think about it is look at your potential initiatives of your business and see, hey, what are the odds that this thing's going to be successful? Maybe put a percentage probability. How much money would that generate or save? And how much time will that take me? And what I find so striking about this exercise, I have a quick little spreadsheet for this, is that sometimes on the surface, you got two pathways that seem, I could do A or B, and they're probably, similar-ish. But then you spend like 5 minutes putting them through some numbers. You're like, holy crap, B is worth 10 times as much in expected wealth generated per hour invested. Let's do B first.
This is something that I really struggle with, and I'm glad you put numbers to it and, gave a quick way to figure it out. I hate cleaning my house. It is totally not the FI way to hire somebody to do anything for you. I'm a healthy woman. I have 2 strong arms and 2 strong legs, and I can do it myself, but I hate it. There's other things that I love that I wouldn't want to hire out, but having this, doing this exercise to see how much it costs me versus how much I could be making if I was using that time to do something else has me thinking that perhaps I should go look and price out house cleaning services.
Well, absolutely. And I think about the hourly rate so much in terms of like, would you spend, if you were to move an hour away from house cleaning, could you spend that in wealth creation activities? And would that, create a substantial amount of wealth? And because of something like house cleaning, you may be able to find at $14 an hour, with a little bit of savvy shopping around. Whereas, I find a harder time, finding a good handyman, for, that may be $50, $60, $70, $80 an hour. And so I more often will choose like, okay, I'm going to learn how to use this power tool and get it done myself, as opposed to a cleaning thing, which you may find you can outsource it for a fifth of the price.
Yeah. And that's, I think a lot of people in the FI community, in this FI or on the FI path, have a hard time paying for something that they can do themselves. And, I've heard it many times explained, oh, you should just calculate the amount of time it takes you versus how much money you could be making. Well, would I be making more money? Maybe not. But this morning I drove into work and my husband joined me because he's taking the little girl to the zoo. And he's like, oh, what if we did this? I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't have time to do that. But I have to clean my house every flipping week. And really every day because my children are pigs. But I have to clean my house. So if I took that away, I would have, let's be honest, I'm spending way more than an hour cleaning my house. I now have that time to generate, start up a business that could go much further, but I don't have the time to even think about it right now. So,
or you might think about that time if you're buying. That's the way I think about it in terms of the assets. Like I am buying an hour and I am selling an hour. It's like I'm just a trader. It's like I'm open for business. I will buy an hour at hopefully a low price of maybe $20 or less. I particularly like buying hours in the Philippines. That's a whole other conversation. And I will sell an hour at maybe $120, $200 an hour. And so if I have more opportunities to buy hours that I can then sell, then I think it's just like a brilliant arbitrage move that, financial savings enthusiasts, I mean, if they had the opportunity to buy a stock at $20 an hour or $20 a share, I guess, and then resell that stock, same day or next day for $120 a share, they would say you're a moron to not buy that. And so I think that's how I like to think about money and time is they say time is money. And it really is true, more so for me, because I can sort of open my calendar up for, hey, more or fewer coaching sessions. But I think it's true for all of us insofar as there are all kinds of things we could be doing that might save money. For example, if you just don't have the time or energy to shop around for lower insurance, you're like, oh my gosh, that sounds like such a headache, although that'd probably be a win. And it's like, you could say, okay, for today, I'm going to hire someone to clean my house for 3 hours. And I'm going to spend that 3 hours trying to find lower insurance rates. And so you may discover that your insurance savings dwarfs the cost of your home cleaning. You got a clean home. You're coming out ahead on the money side of things, and you just feel awesome because you're basking in your clean home with extra money and feeling smart about your insurance move.
Yeah, I love this concept, and I definitely apply this in my own life. I think, on a side tangent, this is a very powerful part of real estate investing in particular, because a real estate investor can do the work themselves if they earn a very low dollar amount per hour as they get their portfolio off the ground, and then hire it out as their portfolio grows and their time becomes more valuable over an investing timeline.
Certainly.
In that context, or in the context of investing, how do you think about it when you have, hey, here's how much dollars per hour I earn with my time, but then I'm also layering in the income generated by assets in terms of the value of my time as well as I become wealthier? So do you have a way to factor that in?
I've played this a lot of ways. And the way I think at the end of the day, your numbers are telling you something. And sometimes I think like we could make an assumption, hey, that all of the time I have left on this earth is equal in value to all of the wealth that I expect to have generated from this asset base. And so that's kind of trippy to ponder. And you may very well disagree with that sort of fundamental assertion, but that gives you one estimate of a dollar per hour ratio. What I like more so is, what am I actually earning right now from my labors? And then the money that you're earning sort of passively is just kind of, there to be enjoyed, to be invested, because it's not, unless you have the ability to amp up and increase that amount of passive income by doing some active, stuff up front and seeding those assets.
Got it. Okay. So now the next question I have here is in terms of taxes. So if I earn $30 an hour, right, after taxes, and I'm going to hire something out for $25 an hour, that spread is probably too close. Does it make sense? Because my taxable income is getting shaved by 30% or whatever. So do you take a discount based on your expected tax liability from your earnings in your calculation?
Well, I think you just want to try to be apples to apples as you think about this, in terms of, am I spending after tax dollars to enjoy after tax hours, in terms of like leisure, if you will, or am I spending pre-tax dollars on pre-tax hours? So for example, that if I did, some coaching work, hey, that's revenue, but then that will be taxed. But likewise, if I paid someone to do my website updates, then that is also, a business expense, which is pre-tax there. So that's just how I think about it. Just make sure that we're on the same, basis, to be fair.
Oh, very simple and beautiful explanation. Love it.
Well, thank you.
So Pete, one of the things I think that's kind of awesome about the way you're approaching this is you're so analytical, you're so numbers driven. You took a shot, you saved up, you spend you spend very little, you optimize the value of your time, you optimize your runway, you think like a business person. Isn't that like a strange quality? Like how should I feel about that if I'm not as analytical or not as, all out optimization mindset driven as you?
Well, it's definitely strange. And so I'll give you that. One time I was buying a pillow and I didn't have much money. I was in college. I had like $300 to my name. I was like, is this really a worthwhile investment? If I think about how I currently have a poor pillow and the value of my enhanced sleep quality, and yet the cost of this pillow. And so I was like, oh my gosh, Pete, you're stressing me out. So like, I'm sorry about that. So it's true that I'm kind of wired to think that way, and consulting kind of just, crank that up a little bit. But I guess that's what I think is at the end of the day, you make your own money choices that really work for you. And I think Mindy when she was on my podcast, thank you, Mindy, I think she said that so well with regard to, is like, I don't care what people think about this. And I think that's really the best way to play it, is that, everyone's going to have a money opinion for themselves and for you. They might think that you're crazy for doing live-in flips. Like, oh my gosh, how could you live in those dumps? Oh, how could you expose your children to that? It's like, it's like, okay, now we're getting a little judgy, like, excuse me. So they're going to do that. And others will be like, oh my gosh, that is so brilliant. I didn't even know you could do that. You're going to be, creating so much wealth by doing so. And likewise, that's for every decision. So we have not had a car in Chicago for 13 years that I've lived here. I got married and got now 2 kids under 2. A car is probably on the way shortly. We live right near the train. And so I was a little bit embarrassed, actually, like, we still don't have that car. We're trying to find the one that works great with all these criteria. And we haven't really been out and about shopping for it, kind of busy with these kiddos. And then someone said to me, well, what do you need a car for? You're right by the train station. And I was like, wow, I thought I was weird for not having a car. You think it's weird to get a car. And it's just like, you know what? You can't please everybody. It's not even worth trying. So I just sort of think about, what do you value? And how do you think about it? What are your goals? And do your thing. And some people will love it. Some people will hate it. But most people are just more consumed with their own lives and money to care, in my experience.
Love it. Yeah. I mean, it's about what you want. And I think that the rare quality is not so much the analytical, hey, I'm going to optimize my time. I'm going to have a very clear understanding of my daily run rate for cash expenditure, those sorts of things. I think the more rare thing is like, I have a clear understanding of exactly what I want. And,
right.
and like, that is the piece that's missing, I think, from a lot of folks. And once you have that, financial freedom is a very powerful tool to help you get there. And optimizing on all fronts can be kind of a no-brainer, obvious choice in moving towards that, and not weird at all. Or if people call it weird, too bad. You're working towards what you want.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great point with regard to being clear on what you want. And because, I am in fact making less money now than I would be making if I, stuck to the consulting route. Like, all right, hey, let's be manager partner by now. Hey, baby. And so in a way, I think about that as like, oh my gosh, I could have so much money if I had done that. But at the flip side, it's like, but I'd also be working a lot more, and I'd be doing activities that I'm less into than what I'm doing. I would have less kind of control and flexibility over my schedule. And I would have met all these really cool people that I'm meeting and doing my thing. And a lot of my expenses, are now tax deductible, which is really cool. So I genuinely feel wealthier now than I did then. And then I would in a world in which I didn't have, much time to spend on the things that are really important to me. Even though if we compare bank accounts to, my Bain colleagues who's remained, theirs are larger at the moment.
No, they're not.
Oh.
They have more coming in, but they also have way more going out. So
That's
the
true.
bottom line number is probably going to be significantly lower than yours, especially if they're renting instead of owning. Don't you have a house hack?
I sure do. Yeah.
And how much of your mortgage payment are you paying every month?
Oh, well, it's awesome. We are paying about negative $130 for our domicile.
Okay, so 0% of your mortgage payment comes out of your pocket. Totally. I bet 100% of their rent comes out of their pocket. I bet 100% of their mortgage payment comes out of their pocket, and their car payment, and their vacations, and their fancy cell phone, and their cars, and yada, yada, yada. And I don't wish to cast aspersions upon you, but you're wearing a t-shirt to work. Could you wear a t-shirt to work at Bain? And that's the best t-shirt ever, by the way. I have one and it's super awesome. But could you wear that to Bain?
No.
Only on the rarest of days.
Yeah, Sundays.
Yeah. If you zing, weekend work.
Yeah, no. Do you work on the weekends right now?
Most weekends I don't, but from time to time, when I have a really cool opportunity and there's some urgency, or I was having too much fun with the kids during the weekdays, then I will kind of make up for some lost time on a Saturday. But most of the time, no.
Hey, I read The Firm by John Grisham. I know 120 hours means you work on Saturday and Sunday. And Bain is one of those John Grisham firms, right? Like, not really, but probably not owned by the mob. Well, maybe I shouldn't go that way. I don't know.
What's a full day? Well, they said to expect an average of 55 to 60 hours of work a week, which is a whole lot more than 40. And that average, I've learned also, I think, includes that some weeks you're unstaffed, which is kind of cool. You're paid to not do much, but those zeros, right, are being offset by even more than 60-hour weeks elsewhere. So
70, 80, 120.
So I did have a few 80+ hour weeks, and those were exhausting. And if you happen to really be enjoying it, like you're so interested in the case, then that's cool. But sometimes you're not. And then that's not pleasant to be spending more time on something that you're not into. But there's a lot of pros and cons. That's my official opinion is like, those intense careers in like, big law or strategy consulting are often a great place to start a career. But for many, not a great place to end the career. If you want to do other things, outside of work with gusto. So that's one man's opinion. Others get really into it and are lifers and have no regrets. So, as long as they're doing what they really want to do and what works for their values, then, right on.
Yeah, I don't think those people are listening to this show, but I welcome them. If you know somebody who's working 120 hours a week, let them listen to this show. So I want to cover one more thing before we make it to the famous four. You said that when I was on your show, I said, I just don't care what people think. And, that's a great position to be in, if I do say so myself. But it's also taken me a while to get to that point. I have a 12-year-old daughter who is now currently, what do people think of me? And I'm like, who cares? But, being my age and saying who cares is very different from when you're 12 years old and saying who cares. And there's this like so spot on Wait But Why cartoon where it says what you think people are doing. And it's you standing in the middle, surrounded by people. And I'll link to this in the show notes, which can be found at biggerpockets.com/moneyshow77. It's you. It's like a stick person standing in the middle, surrounded by all these people who are like, ooh, let me look at him. Let me look at him. Followed by what's actually happening is you standing there and everybody else is looking at their phones.
Right.
Nobody cares. Like ultimately the people who said, wow, you don't have a car, ultimately it's not going to change their life if you get one or don't get one. So do what's best for you.
Right on.
Step down from my soapbox. Okay.
Preach it.
It is time now for the famous 4 questions. These are the same 4 questions that we ask of all of our guests. I'm sorry, 4 questions and a command. Are you ready?
I'm fired up.
What is your favorite finance book?
You just had him on, and it was Ramit Sethi's I Will Teach You to Be Rich. I read it shortly after it came out and really opened my eyes to automation and some of that concept of, as he put it, to mercilessly cut what you don't care about and then lavishly spend on what you do. Made me feel fine about, lattes or whatever and making my choices that worked for me.
Love it. Yeah. Great book.
That's a great book. And that episode was episode 73 of the BiggerPockets Money Podcast. That was a lot of fun. It was nice to talk to Ramit.
All right. What was your biggest money mistake?
Oh boy, it's embarrassing. I lost over $30,000 doing options trading. And it's because a guy I know, respect, value, he's brilliant, said, hey, I'm making some money doing this. I was making some money in the first couple of months, but hey, we didn't fully understand the ins and outs of what we were doing. And then later we realized that our options brokerage was being run by a fraudster who became featured on an episode of American Greed, and he's now in prison. So I felt real dumb on 2 levels. Like, understand what you're putting your money into is pretty basic, but I got seduced by, this is a clever opportunity we've discovered that others don't know about.
Well, that sounds like it's my Chinese fruit juice company in a different kind of vein there. But yeah, it's the whole gambling, trying to speculatively make a couple of quick bucks on some things when there's a time risk included in that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, don't beat yourself up too much about that because you only lost $30,000. There are lots of people who lost significantly more doing things that they don't really understand. And, shameless plug for BiggerPockets. That's kind of why BiggerPockets exists. We want to help people learn how to invest in real estate so they aren't making these silly decisions, such as renting to a professional tenant or, not doing a background check or trusting their gut when it came to renting. Oh, they said they were, they seemed really nice. Yeah, they always seem really nice until they stop paying the rent. Okay, again, stepping down from my soapbox. What is your best piece of advice for people who are just starting out?
Well, we kind of covered it, but I would recommend that you take, even just 3 minutes right now and get a rough sense on what is that dollars per hour number. And that will just begin illuminating all sorts of things in terms of, wait a minute, why am I doing this and not paying someone to do this? And why am I paying for this and not doing it myself? I think you'll have some aha moments on both sides of that coin once you're clear on the number.
I think that's great advice. And I'm gonna mention that in the intro as well.
Well, thank you.
All right. What is your favorite joke to tell at parties?
Well, you know what? This is a tricky one. And I know you're fond of the puns. And so
you kind of just already did it with all those vacuum cleaner jokes in the beginning.
And so these might have even come up. I'm not positive. So there's a couple. Here we go. What is a houseware?
I don't know.
What is a houseware?
A dress.
Address.
Oh, nice. Nice.
And your kids are under 2.
That's right.
My dad sent me a joke the other day. He said, why couldn't the bicycle stand up? It was too tired. And he was like, 4-year-old sent me this. So I sent him a selfie with me wearing my t-shirt that has a bicycle on it that says I'm too tired. So
Zing.
Yeah. Oh, well. Well, that 4-year-old will have to kind of come up with some better stuff.
Right. What do you mean? You wear a shirt with that joke on it.
Well, I've already got it, right? I think you gave me that shirt, didn't he?
Okay, Pete, tell me where people can find out more about you.
Oh, sure thing. Well, my epicenter headquarters is awesomeatyourjob.com, but probably the fastest way to get there in your podcast app is just to search awesome space job, and you'll see we got a ton of great stuff for folks who are looking to sharpen the skills required to flourish at work. We had Mindy on, and we'd love to hear from you there.
Yeah, that was a really fun show. That was a little different than some of the other podcast episodes that I normally do, and I really enjoyed, as a podcaster, I really enjoyed your level of preparation.
Oh, thank you.
And you can see, if you're a podcaster, you can see his level of preparation when you speak at Podcast Movement this year.
Woo, that's right.
Woo.
I'm excited.
With another former guest. Aren't you doing it with Rich Jones?
That's right. Rich Jones and I, we're speaking together at Podcast Movement. It'll be a fun one.
So Rich was on episode 56 of our podcast.
You're good with those episode numbers.
Yeah.
You know what? I have a lot of space in my brain. There are some things in there that I don't have that some other people do, like the ability to instantly do math. Okay. Pete Mockaitis from How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really enjoyed this. I need permission to pay somebody to clean my house. And I feel much better with your explanation of how to go through and just figure out how much money you're making, how much money you could be making if you weren't cleaning your house, which is something you hate. So thank you. I personally got a lot out of it, and I hope that our listeners do too. I know they will. This was a great show. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Mindy. Thanks, Scott. It's been a lot of fun.
Okay, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. That was Pete Mockaitis from the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast. Mindy, what'd you think?
My biggest takeaway from this episode is just, it's okay to hire it out. And that, like I said at the beginning, that's really difficult for me sometimes because I can do it myself. Why on earth would I pay somebody? Well, because there are other ways for me to generate money besides just being here, no offense, that I could do if I didn't have these stupid cleaning my house tasks all the time. And I'm not like Pete. I'm not going to hire anybody to wash my clothes. I think that's weird. But, I guess I am judging him, but I'm not really judging him. Like, if he wants somebody else touching his underpants, that's fine. I don't want anybody else touching my underpants. So that's kind of a weird thing for me. But I also don't mind doing laundry. But I really hate cleaning my house. And this is, the way he explained it was really, really, really great. And there's so many things that you can, apply this to in your life. Once I get comfortable paying somebody to clean my house, I'm probably going to get comfortable paying people to do a lot of other things for me too. How about you, Scott? What was your biggest takeaway?
Well, I thought, I think from a really high level, I think that, it's a business. This was a business podcast in a lot of ways, right? There was personal finance elements in here, but really he was applying business concepts to how could he become an entrepreneur who could use that entrepreneurship to design a lifestyle he really loves? And he clearly loves his life and knows exactly where he wants to be spending his time and exactly the value of his time. And I think those were very powerful concepts. When I think about financial independence, I think a lot of our listeners are looking for an endpoint. Hey, I am going to reach this number with this amount of passive income or this net worth relative to my spending, and then I am going to be complete on my journey to financial independence, and then I will do something else. And what Pete did was, no, he was just like, hey, I'm going to accumulate runway as fast as I can, this $40,000 in cash, and then I'm going to go take a shot at what I want to do. And I can do that and be comfortable with it and have high probability of success of building the life that I want much faster than a financial freedom trajectory, because I know what my burn rate is. I know I've got cash to fund that. And I know that within a year or 400 days or however long he was going to be able to generate enough revenue to offset that. And that comes down to basic mathematics, right? What is my daily burn rate? How much runway do I have? What is the value of my time? How do I generate income? How do I generate free cash flow? All that kind of stuff. He figured it out, and he's been able to live exactly the life that he wants as a result of that.
Yeah, he's still working. And he enjoys his job. He's probably back up to his initial income when he graduated from college, but he's enjoying his life so much more. And, he took business practices and applied them to his personal finances. And, that's awesome. That's what I like about this podcast and talking to all these different people is that, what might seem second nature to one person is a brand new concept to somebody else. And like you heard when I discovered that I could pay somebody to do stuff and I don't have to do it all by myself. But, giving somebody the permission to do that is hugely helpful to somebody who might be stuck or, oh, I've got to get to this number. Actually, I don't have to get to this number. If I shift a little bit, look, now I can get to a different number. And, I really enjoyed talking to Pete today because it was very eye-opening.
And one concept that I've been struggling with for a really long time, this is, because I do a similar exercise, right? I kind of know the value of my time and what I should hire out, what I shouldn't. But I was really struggling with this concept of, okay, what's a pre-tax? What's a post-tax? How do I make that comparison? And it's so beautifully simple. It was so easy. He just answered that for me. Business expenses are pre, and are associated with your pre-tax earnings, and personal expenses are associated with your after-tax earnings, right? It's so easy. I don't know why that was so difficult a concept for me to get. And that's exactly what I needed for some of the things in my personal life that I've been debating. Do I do this? It's going to be terrible. Do I hire it out? I don't know. My yard is full of weeds and it's going to take me back-breaking hours of back-breaking work. And I have my answer after this episode.
Pete Mockaitis, changing the lives of Mindy and Scott.
That's right. All right.
Okay, Scott, should we get out of here?
Let's get out of here.
From episode 77 of the BiggerPockets Money Podcast, this is Scott Trench and I am Mindy Jensen. And we are encouraging you to go change your life too. Live your bliss. Follow your bliss. The end. Goodbye. Thank you for listening.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.